do it on the
cute.
day. But yeah, you can literally ask anyone. I'm pretty sure I've seen people will do, and same with like ring bearers and stuff. They'll have like, oh, check under your seats, and like whoever is sitting in this spot,
That's
they
cute.
can like be the witness, or they'll pull names out of a hat, or like little things like that. That can just like make it a little bit more fun if you want to kind of hide the more boring legal side of things.
Yeah. Make your guests feel a bit more included, or find a way to include them or make it fun for them.
Yeah. I've seen like some funny things of people who have been like surprise ring bearers and stuff, and they're like in the comments it'll be like, oh, imagine if this is just some random +1 that
That's what I
met,
was just
like,
thinking. I was like,
time.
maybe you want to limit that selection process to the first 2 front rows.
Yeah.
Because that's where your immediate family typically sits.
Yeah.
Because, yes, you don't want some random +1 being your witness.
Oh, dear. Next up is your getting ready outfit. So obviously, for starters, you don't want to forget your getting ready outfit on the day, because you want to get your nice photos taken in it. But be mindful with this outfit that it is easy to get off. So nothing with like a tight neckline, because you will be taking it off after you've had your hair and makeup done. And
it needs
getting something tight around your neck off and not ruining your hair and makeup is like almost impossible. So yeah, just try and have something that is like either loose fitting or button up.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like stress about needing 3 people there just to hold it
up. On that same note, I'm going to also add that with tight clothing, be mindful with what your wedding dress is showing, because I know this is more a thing with bra straps. They can leave the indent on your skin, and it can take a couple hours for them to just naturally go away. I know sock lines is another thing.
And also, I always usually wear a hair tie around my wrist.
Hair ties on wrist. Because again, it's just that like when you've slept on your sheets too hard and it leaves that indent on your skin, and like normal day-to-day life, you don't actually notice how much time it takes for that to go away.
Yeah.
But it can actually be, you know, an hour or so. And if you're taking it off 30 minutes before the ceremony, it's still going to be there for photos.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely keep that in mind as well when you're getting ready beforehand. I think it's like typically, I think they usually say just try and avoid it completely.
For the whole morning.
Yeah, for the whole morning. Like take all that stuff off the night before and then don't put it back on until the next day.
Yeah.
All right, so what we can see now is our diamond is kind of locked in place, so it's stuck, which is good. It's got some nice locating points, but for me personally, I'm going to drop the height of it a little bit. I think it'll sit a lot nicer and a bit more flush. But all in all, as I said before, because the CADs are designed and the rings are designed for each individual diamond, they don't take a lot of work to manipulate the metal and manipulate the setting to get it all to fit. So it is pretty tedious. You would have seen me go open the claws, close the claws a few times, just trying to get to that nice middle point where I can click the stone in and still work with it, as opposed to it being really loose or not being able to get in at all. So it does take time and does take a lot of backwards and forwards movements, but we just want to make sure we get it right the first time, because we don't want to have to muck around too much, but yeah, we take a lot of time to make sure it's right at the first time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click that stone back out, open it up a little bit more, drop the height ever so slightly, and then I'm going to get our claws ready to push over, and then you'll see me hammer them down.
Another thing you want to look into or even just think about beforehand is venue restrictions, because this can vary depending on how you want to decorate and from venue to venue as well. Some venues won't allow things like candles, sparklers, confetti. Sometimes they'll have limitations of when your vendors can actually enter the space to set up. And if you've got some really elaborate flower setup, that's going to take a few hours and maybe needs to be done the day before. some venues might be like, no, you can only have the space from, 9 a.m. the day of the wedding. And then your vendors are going to be like, we need more time than that. No. So, yeah, definitely something to think about and also inquire about.
Yeah. And also, like some venues won't allow you to put anything like on walls, or I know I've seen a lot lately of like floral arrangements hanging from ceilings and stuff like that. Some venues might not allow you to even do that at all. So it's one of those things that kind of makes wedding planning quite tricky, is that you need to have somewhat of a vision of how you want the overall look of the day to be when you're booking that first thing, which is generally your venue.
Yep.
And that's why it can get quite overwhelming and like tough. So if you try and find a venue that has the least possible restrictions on what you can do, then at least that way you have that freedom throughout the whole planning process of like being able to add things in.
Yep. And do exactly what you want.
Yep. Next up is silverware. So this is like plates, cutlery, napkins, anything like that. Some venues don't provide this, depending on kind of where you're having your wedding. If you are just purely hiring out a venue that is just kind of a room and you get the space, but they're not doing any of the catering themselves, chances are they won't have those kind of silverware things for you to use on the day. And your caterer might not provide it either. So it might be something that you need to then go out and source yourself, whether you rent it or purchase it. I don't know if you really want to purchase 100
plates,
100 plus sets of plates and cutlery. But yeah, it's definitely something that you need to consider. I know it's very popular at the moment to have like really nice and elaborate napkins, and like they're folded really prettily and all of that kind of thing. And that's generally not something that your venue will do, even if they do have napkins that you can use. Whether you need to have like a stylist or someone come in and do that, or if you're going to DIY it. But yeah, just make sure you know kind of what the go is around that.
Yeah, and I guess on that same note too, if you do need to hire your silverware because it's not supplied by the venue or the caterer, who's setting that up?
Yeah.
Because again, like there's no guarantee you'll be allowed into the venue space the day before for you to do it yourself. So yeah, who's going to be the one doing that on the morning of? Like, could you coordinate with your caterers, even though they're not supplying the cutlery? Can they be the ones setting up all the seating placements? So yeah, that's something else, I guess, to think about too.
Another thing that you really want to consider is having a backup plan in case it's raining or if it's like boiling hot. This is mainly if you are having your ceremony outdoors. Obviously, if you're already indoors, it doesn't really matter. But it's like really common that people will say have a backup plan in case it's raining. But if it's like in a 45-degree-Celsius day, you probably don't want to be
super common here in Australia.
Super common here in Australia. Yeah, you probably don't want to be like standing outside for a 30 to 40-minute ceremony, and your guests as well will probably not want to be standing outside. So even if it's like there's a shady option that like your ceremony can just be kind of moved into the shade, or
hand out fans,
moved indoors, hand out like fans, umbrellas, raincoats.
Yeah. I've been to my cousin's wedding was on a really hot day in Adelaide, and Adelaide gets even warmer than here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I was in like a cute little kind of mini dress, cocktail dress, and I was dying. I don't know how the men were doing it in suits.
Yeah.
I was like, I'd be on the floor passed out if I was you. It was so hot, but yeah, they managed to get like a fan and stuff, so it was okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think even if you're having an outdoor wedding, trying to make sure that there is a shady area just for your guests to kind of hang out, even if it's not going to be really hot. But say it's like a 25-degree day, which is relatively mild, but the sun's out, that can still be like blaring hot.
Yeah.
So if you've got a shady spot that your guests can kind of hang out in when they first arrive, and then only be in the sun for the ceremony, it might not be so bad.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, songs for each big moment of the day. So there is actually quite a few moments where you might want a special song playing, and like there are, I guess, the main ones that people, I guess, know of, like the first dance, walking down the aisle, all that kind of stuff. But do you want a particular song playing while you're signing your marriage certificate? Do you want a particular song in the background when you're cutting the cake, entering the reception? Yeah, all these kind of more smaller moments, I guess, that are still big moments or significant time points throughout the night is just going through all of those, and you might not want a particular, or you might not care what song's playing, but if you do, something to think about.
I think like even if you are not super like fussed about what song is playing, the last thing you want is for like that to be the one moment where the DJ plays a song that you absolutely hate.
Yes. So at the very least, maybe you can just write up some songs
list
that you don't want.
Yeah.
If you don't necessarily care for a particular song.
Yeah. Or even just like giving them a list of like 10 or 15 songs that you're like, during those like special moments, these are the songs that we like. Just pick one that you think suits the vibe of what's happening. And your DJ will be able to do that then as well. Next up is transportation to and from the venue. So it's pretty common, like you generally know exactly how you're getting to the venue, especially, you know, if you're hiring a limo or a fancy car or something like that. But make sure you know how you're getting back from the venue, because this can sometimes just like kind of get forgotten, especially if you're not doing like an after party after the reception. If you're after the reception going back to your hotel or back to your house or something like that, please don't try and rely on an Uber. Because you don't want to be like, standing outside your venue waiting for an Uber for 15 minutes and then they cancel. And
or if you've got a big dress, trying to shove that into the back of an Uber.
And all your guests are trying to get Ubers and taxis and things like that. It's just, very tricky. So just, try and figure out how you actually are going to get out of your venue at the end of the night as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, next we have a cake serving kit. So a lot of venues don't actually include this, and you have to bring your own. So there may be additional charges around serving your cake, and this also may be a hidden cost at the venue. So definitely ask about that. Ask if they include a serving kit, and just, I guess be prepared for that.
Yeah, it's super common that like your venue won't include cake cutting and serving in their base cost. So definitely make sure that you check that. And even if they do, they still might not have like a nice cake cutting set that you want to use for that cake cutting. How many times can we say cake cutting in the podcast moment, like photo moment, where you want to be using something nice, potentially.
Or if you've got a really massive cake, they might not have a knife long enough. You need one of those really long, skinny knives, I feel like, which very niche.
I mean, you can always just not cut through the whole
thing.
Just cut the little
tiny
corner
little
off.
tip.
Good to still keep it in mind.
Yes.
The next one is to make sure that you have pens or Sharpies or anything to sign the guest book. It's like probably not going to be something that you'll forget to bring the guest book, but you don't really want people to get there and not have a pen and everyone's fishing around in their handbags trying to find something to use to sign. So by a few, I would say don't try and just have one there, because I'm always ending up accidentally taking pens from places that that I've just borrowed because I...
Alrighty, so I have now cut our seat. I've opened up our bezel a little bit. I've got our claws nice. I've opened up the inside. So when we make the inside nice and flat where we've got our eagle tips, that'll mean it can sit really flush to the stone. So we don't want any claws slightly lifting or, catching on your clothes and threads and stuff. That's what we've got now. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to polish the inside of the setting just to make sure it really sparkles. All the light comes from the top, but we just want to make sure it's always nice and polished and really clean. I'm then going to start to push the claws over. So that'll be, again, a little bit of back and forth, just making sure I'm straight. We don't want those claws coming on an angle and our stone on an angle and doing a bit of a dance. So we're going to keep it even on as many sides as possible all at once. I'll push them over, and then I'm going to hammer over. I will keep the volume off, especially when I'm hammering over. It is quite loud, so I know you're all not going to want to listen to that. But once I've got all the claws down, I'll walk you through how I'm going to do our eagle tips.
Especially like the last thing you want is the person that's walking you down the aisle doesn't
Yes.
have a seat.
Yes.
And then they have to like make people move, or they're ending up like 4 aisles back. So
Yeah. Which is usually the father of the bride.
yeah.
Which would be quite sad.
Yeah. And also if you are having your bridal party, like you plan to have your bridal party sit down throughout some of the ceremony, make sure that they have plenty of seats to do so as well.
As well.
Because you don't really necessarily want them scattered.
No. It would also just look a little messy too if your bridal party has to then
find a seat.
yeah,
and, like,
or have to go a couple rows back to get a seat and then have to go in and out of the aisle.
Yeah.
So yeah, just something to consider.
The next thing is to remember to eat. It is very common to forget to eat anything on your wedding day. Thinking back, I don't think I ate lunch.
Yeah.
We had like planned out breakfast and then kind of forgot about lunch because everything is just, there's so much happening that eating is like one of the first things, at least for me, that I always forget if I'm super busy. And on your wedding day, it's just like heightened times 1,000.
Yeah.
So have someone that is in charge of like organizing either food to be delivered to the house that you're getting ready at, or to come in the morning with, you know, a whole bunch of food, make platters, things like that you can kind of snack on throughout the day. And yeah, make sure that you have lunch organized. Yep. I know like a lot of the times I'll see brides and they're having breakfast in the morning, but then between that like 10 a.m. that you have breakfast and your 4 p.m. ceremony, make sure you're still having something in between then. And drink lots of water.
Yeah.
You have to like stand throughout most of your ceremony typically, and if you're dehydrated and it's a hot day, you really don't want to risk passing out.
Yeah. And if you feel like, oh no, there's not enough time to go have lunch, or like it's just not going to work with like where you're at, I've actually seen a few people, and it's super cute. They actually go to a really kind of aesthetic restaurant or cafe after the ceremony, and they weave that into their wedding photos. So they get like really cute photos of them like feeding each other lunch, like pasta, like that kind of old Italian vibe. And yeah, so it's like they then have a proper lunch, get fed, but like it's also being doubled up as part of their wedding photos.
That's really
if they're a bit time sensitive.
Yeah. Or even like if you are if you're going to be going to your venue like before your wedding, some venues will like have you there in like a bridal suite or something like that. Get like Macca's.
Yeah.
Macca's drive-through on the way there, and like just have some chips or something.
Yeah. Just something.
Just anything small.
Okay, the next important thing to think about is what time is the sun setting on that particular day, because this can affect your ceremony time as well as your portraits, reception timeline. Your photographer will most likely want to take you away for sunset pictures, and you don't want this to clash with anything else on the night. So yeah, I guess being prepared for that, and allowing for it and weaving it in. Yeah,
weave it into your timeline as much as you can. For the most part, like you can literally see what time sunset is like down to the minute.
Yeah.
So just have the conversation with like your venue and your photographer to see generally how long before sunset they actually like to take you, and then that way you can make sure that for say 45 or half an hour or so before sunset you have that time to just go and get those photos taken if that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
The next thing that you need to consider is where everything is actually going at the end of the night. So a lot of the time your venue won't allow you to kind of leave anything there overnight and pick it up the next day. You'll have to take it all with you after the reception. So make sure you know and you organize who is doing this, where it's going. You want to make sure that whoever you kind of assign this task to will have enough space for everything, like in their car, whether it's like you assign it to 3 people to make sure they have enough space, because it will take up a lot of space in the car.
Yes.
Even if they have like a big like 4-drive or ute or something like that, chances are you'll need 2.
Yeah. And I would also recommend assigning this task to someone who's reliable,
Yeah.
because if you've assigned this to whoever and they've had a couple drinks and then they
Now they're
forgot to
getting an
leave
Uber.
things.
Or,
They're getting an Uber. They've forgotten half the stuff. You could get charged for this.
Yeah.
And 1, you could get charged by the venue because you've left a bunch of stuff there. But then 2, if this is stuff you've hired and then you can't get a hold of it anymore, you could also get charged.
Yeah.
So definitely assign this to, someone you know is very reliable and is actually going to make sure that happens at
Yeah.
the end of the night.
And write them a list too. So
Yeah.
while you're like booking everything in that's going to be arriving at the venue or that you're going to be taking to the venue, put that on a list so that you can give that to this person and then they know exactly what it is they need to take. Because in some cases, like we had our venue supplied some things. So like if we didn't tell anyone, they probably would have started taking like
Yeah.
all the table like decorations that the venue provided, and that's not theirs to take. And then again, you would get charged for it.
Okay, another thing you have to think about is what's happening with the leftover cake. So it's super common, or it's a super common tradition to save part of your wedding cake and put it in the freezer for your first anniversary. So do you want to do this? Who's taking it home? Because if you and your partner are going back to a hotel, I don't think they really have freezers in hotel rooms.
Usually
They've got
not.
fridges, but
Yeah.
you don't really want to be putting it in a fridge for a couple days, then bringing it and putting it in the freezer.
Yeah.
You want to be putting it in the freezer straight away.
Yeah.
So again, I guess having someone who's reliable, who can be in charge of that and make sure that's all going to go smoothly and well.
Yeah, and someone who's like going directly home where
Yes.
they can put it into the freezer.
Straight
Because
away.
especially like if you and your partner take it and then you're going to a hotel and then you're going on your honeymoon and then like it's
Not
just
gonna work.
not gonna work and you'll end up with moldy
Yes.
moldy cake.
Not good.
I don't like that tradition, by the way.
No? You
No,
think
it
it's
really
gross?
grosses me
Well,
out.
see, here, with this tradition, because I know it's with Italians, it's the top layer of the cake is a fruit cake.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that also has longer life
Oh, yeah,
naturally
yeah,
than a sponge cake, and it freezes a lot better. So I don't know if that's necessarily where it started, this tradition,
Yeah.
or if there's other cultures who do a similar thing. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of like, I know in my family that's what people do, and it's a lot more pleasant to eat a year later
Yeah. Okay.
after it's been frozen,
Okay,
rather
I
than
can
a
see
frozen
that
sponge
a
cake.
bit better. I can
Yeah.
see like a fruit cake.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense because
Yeah.
we had like a what was it, like a white chocolate mud cake kind
yeah.
of thing, and like the last thing
It doesn't really freeze
I
well.
wanted to do was
Yeah.
like put that in the freezer.
Yeah,
and-
so yes, all the kind of fancy flavors and
yeah,
stuff, I don't think freezes that well. Whereas, traditionally, or at least in the Italian
yeah.
is fruitcake, which does freeze well
Okay.
and naturally does last a lot longer because it's so high in sugar or something. Anyway, okay, next thing, pack an emergency kit. So things in this are like a little toothbrush, band-aids, deodorant, makeup wipes, cotton buds, one of those like little eraser things that help with stains.
Yeah, like the stain erasers.
Oh yes, stain erasers, eyelash glue, little things like that that maybe one of your bridesmaids can hold on to throughout the day. Just any little touch up you may need throughout the day. At least you've got something that can help you.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned eyelash glue.
Yeah.
The best thing to use eyelash glue for on your wedding day, obviously, if you have lashes that peel off, like yes, but put it on the back of your necklaces, and then that way it'll just like tack your necklace onto your neck. Because you know how necklaces always spin around,
spin.
you end up with like the clasp thing sitting at the front, and it's not really where you want it. You can just use eyelash glue to glue it at the back, and then that way your necklace is going to stay in the perfect position. And also like if you have a little gem or something on there, you could just put a little bit of eyelash glue on that as well, so it stays like in the one spot facing in the right way.
Yeah.
The next thing that you want to make sure you do is to pack an overnight bag. This is obviously especially important if you're spending the wedding night at a different location than you spent the night before the wedding. But that is another thing that can just be really easily forgotten or left behind, that you want to make sure you bring that to the venue with you so you don't have to be like running around trying to go and pick something up or not having like something to change into and out of the wedding dress or things like that.
Yep, definitely important. Okay, our second last thing that we don't want to forget is bring a spare pair of shoes just in case. So no matter how comfortable you think your wedding shoes may be, or even if you've broken them in quite a lot, after wearing them for 12 hours, that may change. So yeah, just...
Alrighty, so as you can see, I have now hammered down all our claws. So all 4 claws are down, stone is straight, it's really nice and secure. It was a bit of like the whole process, a bit of back and forth, takes some time. When we hammer those claws down, we like to leave nice thick pieces of metal on top to fold over. What that does is when you hammer down, create a lot of tension, and when you it's like called work hardening. So when you work hard on the metal, it doesn't want to move anymore. So you've moved it so many times, it just doesn't want to go back. What that means is your claws won't spring back open. We like to keep them really flat, obviously, so we don't have them, sticking too high. But we want to make sure that we find a middle point where there's enough metal where you can bend them over and create the tension, but not too much metal where you can't bend them over. So now what we're going to do is I'll show you guys up here. I'm going to use a file and I'm going to shorten our claws and start to shape them. So this is the easy part, we get it in. Now is all the final finishing. So we're going to file them, we're going to use all these different little silicone wheels that you'll see pop up, different colors, going to spray stuff everywhere, you're going to lose the diamond, it'll be fine. And then what we'll do is that's like a pre-polish. It'll help shape and pre-polish everything. And then we're going to pre-polish on the bench. I'll give it a nice buff so you can see the shine. But I will polish this fully and we will show you that in the stories later on today. So stay tuned for that one.
You don't want to be carrying it around all night. Just assign it to one of your bridesmaids or someone in the bridal party. And then they can like snap pictures and stuff for you as well. Yeah. And then make sure, just in case, you have a phone charger with you. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Save the Date podcast. We hope you learned something new. And if you're currently planning a wedding, congratulations, good luck, and have fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow or subscribe and leave us a review wherever it is that you're listening.
Make sure to come and connect with us on our socials at the Save the Date podcast and join our Facebook group, the Save the Date community. We hope you have a wonderful day or night, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Bye.
Bye. You're listening to the Save the Date podcast, where we talk all things weddings, jewellery and romance. With love from Cullen Jewellery.
Hello and welcome back to the Save the Date podcast. I'm Sheridan.
And I'm Juliet, and we are so happy you're here.
In today's episode, we are going to be giving you all of our hottest tips and tricks for having a wedding fit for an introvert. So we'll give you a rundown on introverts and extroverts, how to know which you are, and why you might like to do things differently if you are an introvert when it comes to wedding planning.
So sit back, relax, and let's get straight into the episode.
Okay, so to start off, introverts versus extroverts, what actually are they? So basically, these are personality types, and there are different kinds of introverts and extroverts. And basically, what it refers to is where somebody actually gets their energy from. So it's kind of thought, I guess, that an introvert is just a shy person and an extrovert is someone who's super outgoing. But that's not actually just what the meaning of introvert or extrovert is. Obviously, Like it is, I guess, more common for an introvert to be more shy. But yeah, it literally just refers to where they get their energy from. So an introvert is somebody who receives their energy from being alone or in small groups, like in social settings rather than really large groups of people. So an example of this is that like at the end of the work week, they might like to go home and like decompress alone rather than like going out for drinks with the work team or something like that. They tend to feel drained after social interactions. And another note for introverts is that they tend to process their thoughts in their heads rather than like talking them aloud with everybody else.
Then we've got extroverts, which is basically the opposite of introverts. So they feel energized after socialization and collaboration. So they really get their energy from bouncing off people and being, in those social settings.
Yeah.
And they're more inclined to finish off their work week by enjoying time with others and social gatherings. And that's really what fills their cup.
So it's super common for people to be a mix of both, like I kind of mentioned. So I know that I'm like, I guess, an introverted extrovert in some settings. So like if I'm with my really close family, I get a lot of energy from being with them. But if I'm in like a big group of people that I don't really know, I get super drained.
Yeah, same. I would say I'm probably pretty similar.
Yeah.
Like I really love my alone time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I do kind of, want to finish the week with just relaxing, or if I've had a big day, I want to go home and just relax by myself in a quiet setting. But then also get me on the right day.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be out and about with everyone.
Okay, so how can being introverted actually affect the wedding day and wedding planning? So let's get into that side of things. So I think the most important thing here is that although like you might have dreamed of your wedding day pretty much your whole life, like I know I definitely did as a woman, but now that it's like really happening, it can start to get really overwhelming, and like the thought of having everybody there with like all eyes on you on one day is like a lot.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody that does like get their energy from being alone. It's like, very daunting to think about having this one wedding day where it's not even just like you can kind of be a fly on the wall in like a social setting. Like you are literally the center of attention. And there's a lot of things, I guess, in the wedding planning process as well that can kind of add to that stress. So you might start out thinking it's going to be fine, and then as the wedding planning process goes on, you're like getting more and more nervous, I guess. Something else during the wedding planning process is that there is generally a lot of interaction with strangers. Like when you're trying to find vendors, trying to find a venue, all of those kinds of things, like you're talking to someone that you've never spoken to or met or know at all. So that can also be another thing that like can just make it a little bit more overwhelming. And then on top of that, you also have a lot of traditional social events in the lead up to a wedding. Like you have a hen's party.
Alrighty, so we've now cut and shaped our claws. I didn't tell you, but so obviously we've got a file that we use to cut. I use to cut the direction, and then we're going to use this little guy. This is what we call a graver, or use it for engraving. But we also use it because it's got such a tight, sharp edge to it that when I push along, it gives you a nice polished finish on the side. So you get nice and flat claws. So what we're going to do now is, like I said, we're going to grab those silicone wheels. I'm going to clean the whole thing up. So there's plenty of marks and stuff of where we've, put the pliers, put our little pusher, a few bits and pieces. All of that now gets fully taken out, and then that'll give us our nice, very smooth final finish. So the other thing we always have to keep in mind is we want to make sure our claws are symmetrical. So we want to make sure the same length, same width, same direction facing, because if it's a little bit abstract, it's not always the look that everybody wants, and it's also not the look that we are chasing. So without holding you up any longer, let's finish this ring off.
To be like, oh no, like I'll be fine. I'll just do it because that's what everyone else does. But yeah, just be honest with yourself and really be like, you're not going to fare well or fend well in
Yeah.
those situations.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's get into some tips for what you can do to try and make this wedding planning process a lot less overwhelming. And the first one is to really get into the nitty-gritty and discuss your wedding vision with your partner, and make sure that from the get-go you and your partner are aligned with like how you want your wedding to look.
Yes. And I think this could be one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Because especially, I know sometimes people say opposites attract. So you could be an extremely introverted person, but you're about to marry someone who's the complete opposite to you, who wants all those social events. And yeah, it's so important to be on the same page and be honest with them about your feelings and finding that happy medium between you both. You may both be on the same page. You may both be really introverted and very quickly and easily agree on a very more like toned back social wedding. But yeah, if your partner is the opposite to you, I suppose that's when it's important to really be clear with each other about what you want and your feelings.
And I think like if that is the case where you're like the total opposites and you start to feel pressured to do things a certain way, like even if you start with like that tiny disagreement at the very get-go of wedding planning, that's just going to add and build so much pressure over the wedding planning process, and it'll eventually boil over. Like
Yeah.
if you're starting off on like a bit of an awkward or bad note where you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable and pressured to do things a certain way, that's just going to keep building. Like you're not going to be able to just forget about that throughout the wedding planning process. So yeah, you've got to make sure.
And then if it gets to the point where you actually start these social events because your partner wanted them, and then it brings the enjoyment, or the enjoyment for you is a lot less because you're almost being forced to do these wedding social events, even though it should be a really joyful and happy time, but it's like then you're stuck feeling like, why am I not enjoying this? I should be, when it's not your fault.
Yep, 100%. So it's really important at the early stages that you need to be heard, and you also need to listen. Like you and your partner, you need to agree together because they are likely thinking about their dream wedding as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to like force them to do something that they don't necessarily want to do either. But it's just, finding that happy balance, and both of you probably need to compromise in some way.
Mm-hmm. And I would actually also say this, not just the social events, but I would say this also stems to the number of people you invite to your wedding.
Yes.
Because again, some families have different ideas and different perspectives of how many or how far the invites should span. I know it's a very traditional Italian thing to invite cousins of cousins and friends and of family who, you know, it just can very quickly become too many people. And I think having, those boundaries and being very clear about what you want. Because, there's nothing wrong with having a huge wedding and inviting those people if that's what you want. But if it's not, that also needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
That kind of falls under this umbrella.
Yeah, I think that like it's really important, especially when your family start coming into it and like wanting to have their say. Like you need to establish boundaries. And if you're not somebody who is like happy to say no to those things, like you and your partner have to pick the person who is happy to have those, I guess, tougher conversations to be like, no, this is what we're doing. Like, unfortunately, you know, you don't have a say as my auntie who wants to invite her best friend or like, you know. So yeah, definitely pick somebody out of the two of you that is going to be able to say no and actually enforce those boundaries that you set. So like Juliet was saying, it's super important as well to be mindful when you're creating your guest list. So depending on what you've discussed and how you've kind of decided you want your wedding to look, it might mean having a smaller guest list and having to put in place those boundaries on not inviting just absolutely anyone that you've ever spoken to. But doing this can make the day feel so much less overwhelming because like you've just got your closest friends and family there, if that is the case. And something that can make weddings feel overwhelming as well is like you kind of feel like you have to be able to talk to everybody, but you never have enough time. So if that's something that is like really valuable to you, that you'll be able to spend time with all of your guests that are there, having a smaller guest list.
Alrighty, so we're pretty much at the end. This is actually my favorite part, or that was my favorite part. I like that green silicone wheel, nice and a little bit abrasive, takes everything away. No marks, no scratches, nothing left. It's almost like we didn't even touch the job. And then I like the blue and the pink, and this is my favorite now. You can't see anything, it's a mess. So look at that, like it's just got little bits of residue left everywhere. My favorite part now, brush it off, give it a polish, and then you go, very nice. You get to see the sparkle of the diamond, the sparkle of the ring, everything comes together right at the end, exactly how you want it. So let's finish it off and stay tuned.
You should not feel obligated to invite them just because you might hurt their feelings, or because you're inviting this person, you have to invite them. I think especially, again, it's coming back to your own happiness and what you want. You don't want to be stuck not enjoying your day because you feel too overwhelmed or it's just too much for you, when you just could have cut a few extra people and it would have helped a lot.
That's a really good point. The next thing that you can do, and this might be a little controversial, but is that you can use technology to communicate with everybody. You don't have to meet up with everyone in person. Like, I don't know about you or any of the listeners, but I hate phone calls.
Yeah.
It's like my biggest pet peeve when someone calls me and I'm like, this could have been a text.
See, I'm the complete opposite.
Really?
I hate replying to text messages.
Yeah. I'm terrible at replying to texts as well, but like,
I'm so bad at replying.
when
But
someone,
I'm like, call me.
when someone calls me, I'm like, something's wrong. Like, just automatically go into like fight or flight. But you can communicate with all of your vendors, like just over text or email.
Yeah, even email.
It's really common with your vendors that they will want to catch up with you either in person or at the very least like a Zoom chat, just so that they can get to know you and like actually understand what it is that you want for your wedding. You don't have to do this at all if you're feeling like it's too much, but something that I would consider with this is...
And there you have it, guys. Have a look at that. If I wanted a diamond, 3 carat is my minimum. I like it. It's come out really nice. Those claws got a nice shape, nice and pointy. Not too tough, not too long, not too much going on. It really helps complement this nice, beautiful stone. Like I said before, thank you very much for tuning in today. I know it's a little bit different to what we're normally used to on our Thursday morning live. Stay tuned this afternoon. We're going to take it out of this. I'm going to give it a nice emery, polish it up, and I'll show you all how it goes. As always, have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, guys.